So we are already halfway through the Acolyte series. Let that sink in for a moment there. Literally nothing of value has happened. The writing has been poor, the acting has been atrocious, and the Disney agenda is so obvious. It is all in your face, up front and center, to the point where we all know, even casual fans know, that all of Disney's shenanigans are now something that's no longer vague or no longer hidden or hard to actually figure out. A lot of the regular Star Wars fans are waking up more and more month by month based on what's been going on with not just the Acolyte, but also with what Charmin Obaid-Chinoy has been talking about when it comes to the upcoming Rey Star Wars film. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You could also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So we all know that Leslye, Headland, and Kathleen Kennedy are the ones responsible for creating such a disaster, but we all have to really pay attention more to those like Bob Iger, to the top 3 shareholders at Disney like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street that are really funding all this nonsense to the Walt Disney Company and allowing all this to happen when it comes to brands like Star Wars, Marvel, etc., etc. Now, there's been a lot of drama happening behind the scenes between Lucasfilm and Disney and what's been going on with the Acolyte and how the overall damage control is really hitting a new low. Let's get into this. Now, one thing about Bob Iger, and I pointed this out several times, is that he will say whatever he has to say to keep the Acolyte series afloat, because he knows that this is another Star Wars show that failed on their overall watch, and basically there's been a lot of things going on there with their overall strategy. Now, on top of everything, with the Acolyte Episode 4 already a canon-breaking disaster for fans, those like Leslye, Headland, and Kathleen Kennedy have been defending the Acolyte like no tomorrow. One major development now has much to do with the Acolyte emergency meeting that was held by the Walt Disney Company between Bob Iger and the Disney heads, and what actions are going into effect right now after the failure of 4 episodes and the press tour disaster. Now, one serious update to this emergency meeting involves how Bob Iger and the board recently created an entire strategy to improve the disaster of the Acolyte in the worst way possible. One part of this involves how Bob Iger is preparing to make a full-fledged statement within the next 2 weeks that will blame not just the marketing of the Acolyte, but also will continue to blame fake reviews, quote-unquote, that were used on sites like Rotten Tomatoes. Now, Iger is also ready to make a public statement that the Acolyte failed due to a frequency issue, very similar to the blame game that they engaged in after the release of The Last Jedi. In addition to this, Bob Iger and the board also specifically instructed those like Leslye, Headland, and Kathleen Kennedy to engage in various forms of damage control and to double down on that strategy, and were being forced by Disney to divert from answering specific questions related to the Acolyte disaster and backlash. These new demands made by Disney are now, of course, planned to go into full effect by July, where Kennedy and Headland will double down on damage control. Now, Iger and the board also laid, of course, off Amandla Setnberg from multiple Star Wars projects. However, the Acolyte Season 2 is currently in shambles, with Headland and Kennedy desperately fighting Disney to reinstate that season. To make matters even worse for Lucasfilm's sake, the Disney heads immediately agreed with Iger's approach in the emergency meeting to cut back funds drastically on a significant scale for the marketing expenses catered to the Acolyte. This will result in far less TV spots and commercials for the month of July. They reportedly cut back an estimated, get this, $10 million in marketing funds to use those funds elsewhere for the marketing of their upcoming Star Wars project called Skeleton Crew. Already, this strategy by Bob Iger is creating backlash from those like Dave Filoni, not a shocker there, Leslye, Headland, and Kathleen Kennedy, along with the Lucasfilm Story Group, and is a fine example of how they all eventually eat their own in the end. Bob Iger also went in a more desperate path, where he specifically instructed those like Kathleen Kennedy and Leslye Headland to deny there is any agenda or message in the last 4 remaining episodes, to which there really is, based on what Daphne Keane confirmed and other cast members also confirmed, like Charlie Barnett. Now, guys, let me just say one thing before I move on. Now, obviously, Bob Iger and the board, they are losing their overall sense when it comes to the Acolyte. Now, we know that the Acolyte is by far one of the worst additions over at Lucasfilm. And I know I've said this many times, but it really makes The Last Jedi look innocent. It's that bad. Some of you out there may very well disagree with my approach on that, but I really do feel that way. It literally makes The Last Jedi look reasonable. That's how bad the Acolyte truly is. Now, when you look at stuff like Bob Iger, and what kind of nonsense he's been spewing the past couple of days about how the Walt Disney Company is not about any kind of an agenda, or they never engage in any kind of a culture war, or that they're all about quieting down the noise about any kind of message that may have been shoehorned in there, whether it's Star Wars or Marvel, whatever. Now look, we know that they got exposed hard, and ever since that video came out exposing the Disney agenda, where that executive is now pretty much in a leave of absence and is getting ready to get fired, there's been a lot of things going on between Bob Iger, the vice president, the executives, the board of directors. It is a mess at the Walt Disney Company, and we'll have a lot more to talk about that, by the way, in the coming days, so stay tuned on that. However, on top of everything here, in addition to all of this, the press tour disaster reportedly cost Disney an estimated $20 million in funds for the Acolyte, since the marketing backfired completely on all of them. Iger and the board are, of course, moving forward with ordering many of the cast members to no longer engage in any interviews. 0. Moving ahead. Now, which cast members were given those instructions are currently unknown at this time. So I'm leaning to believe that it may very well be, for example, Charlie Barnett, after what he said about how Anakin destroyed the Death Star. That was also a part of the press tour disaster, but we'll have to wait and see specifically which cast members engage in interviews or not, and then we can really say exactly which of those actors and or actresses were given those instructions by the Disney heads. So again, I mean, this goes to show you that the Acolyte truly is a disaster of its own. We have never seen anything like this before when it comes to pop culture, when it comes to anything, especially within Star Wars itself. You know, I think that we've been talking about this for well over a year. For the longest time, I've been calling this The Last Jedi 2.0 or the Acolyte, because it truly is a hack of a series that really tries to, you know, kind of make itself look like Star Wars on the outside, but on the inside it's not. You can slap the Star Wars logo on this all you want and call it Star Wars. It's just not that. It is not Star Wars at all. And we'll talk more about that moving onwards once episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8 drop in the next couple of weeks. So again, like I say, Bob Iger is called Bob Liger because this guy likes to lie all the time about the current status of Lucasfilm, about the current status of the Walt Disney Company, and you have those like Leslye Headland and Kathleen Kennedy endlessly defending this thing at all costs. So I would like to hear what everyone has to say about the most recent emergency meeting related to the Acolyte and what kind of actions are being taken for the series, all these failed strategies, by the way, by Bob Iger. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.